Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. On Apple, recommend Apple Podcasts. On Android, we recommend Spotify. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. That's where you go for the most heat information and conversation. 10 different channels, everything good from Twitter. We put there lots of new signups lately, so we appreciate that. Our community is getting bigger. Eventually, you're not going to want to go anywhere else. Pay the $2.99. You can get your money, well, you can't get your money back for that, but you can cancel at any time if you don't want to continue. Just, that's, the way these subscriptions work. Off the Floor, the most heat anywhere. Also, check out Prize Picks. That's our fantasy sponsor. Use code 5 FIVE. Right now, you can play WNBA. You can also play MLB and more. Go to prizepicks.com, the Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store. Download Prize Picks. Put in the code 5 FIVE. Play your $5, and they give you 50. It's a pretty good deal, 10-1. Prizepicks.com, the official fantasy sponsor of the Five Reasons Sports Network. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yeah, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on Five Reasons Sports, and one of our newer contributors here at the Five Reasons Sports Network. You're part of our Heat group, Coach Geo. You can follow him at Geo Valdez _ on Twitter. Also, Coach Geo on Instagram. Okay, this topic, you threw this one at me a little bit ago. This is one Brady's going to be upset at me for not doing with him, so we got to do this right. I'm sure he's going to want to do it again. We're going to get into the possible closing lineups for the Miami Heat. It's a good thing that we didn't hit this topic, I don't know, a month ago, because this looked a lot different. Obviously, one guy they picked up is probably going to be in those closing lineups, but not just the closing lineup. We're also going to get into sort of what the pecking order should be with those groups. Now, I'll just start here. Whenever I've talked to folks at Inside the Heat about roster construction, they always say that we make too much of the starting lineup. Okay, that the starting lineup is the it's a sexy thing to talk about and all the rest of this. Who starts the game? But that really what they're trying to accomplish is give Eric Spoelstra about 7 players he feels he can close with. And so that he can put those lineup combinations together as he goes forward, and it may change over the course of the year, but he wants to have some flexibility in terms of offense and defense, be able to play the hot hand, but also have a couple guys they can trust. Now, let's just put it this way. Not a great job was done with this last year. Now, some of this was the fact that the closer of the past few years, Jimmy Butler, was at first disinterested and then completely disengaged and then dismissed. So that wasn't an option anymore, and a lot of it fell to Tyler Herro. The numbers in clutch situations last year for the team in general were pretty awful. A couple of years ago, those numbers were great, and it was mostly based on a really strong defense, a top 5 clutch defense, and the ability for Jimmy to get to the line. Those are really the two things that differentiated the Heat. They closed with defense and at the free throw line. Obviously, Bam being a big part of that defense. Last year, they were not able to do that. They did not have players who could get to the line consistently, and they didn't defend well enough down the stretch. And as we know, also, Tyler struggled mightily in clutch situations. As good as his overall numbers were, his clutch numbers were not good, and he acknowledged this. I give Tyler credit for this after the season. He said that the biggest thing he had to learn was how hard it is to close games. So let's put it this way. Tyler Herro is going to be in your closing lineup. But before we go forward with the rest of that closing lineup, what does he need to do differently?
So I don't want to say that there's not much of a higher ceiling he can get to, because I think that there's small incremental progress that he can have that can elevate his game. But if you look at when he's been most effective in clutch situations, it's kind of been when he's been off ball. When there's been a primary playmaker that kind of drew attention, and then Tyler had guys scrambling. He's had his moments, where I think OKC a few seasons ago, Orlando this past season, where he's been able to, lead the team and come back. But his numbers overall weren't great. I think one of the things that he can get to, and you alluded to it earlier, is just getting to the line, uh, being able to control the pace of the game a little bit better. Because there was a few moments where we can all refer to that. I think it was against Chicago in one of the last regular season games where he had a layup and he just decided to pull it from three. I think that was a Chicago game. Like, just better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say getting to the free throw line whenever there's those 13-0 runs that Miami just needs a relief bucket and you can't get it, just getting to the line and slowing the pace of the game down a little bit. That's probably where I would say he can improve.
I think that's where he needs to improve for them. I don't know if there's a lot of room for him to actually do that.
I
He got a
agree.
little bit better, right? I mean, Brady and Alex and I, we've all discussed this quite a bit. Like, I just think the physical limitations play in there, that he just doesn't get the benefit of the doubt from the officials, even when he attacks the contact. He's not a flopper.
Mhm.
He's also not someone who attacks hard to the rim a lot. He'll get into that floater. You're not going to get a lot of calls on the floater, and I never see I don't see the officials ever making him a 6+ free throw attempt
No.
guy, or anything long, which is a shame because he shoots it really well from the line and he shoots it well in clutch situations too. So that's not the problem. The problem is just getting there enough. All right, but we're going to assume he's going to be there. We're
Yeah.
also going to assume that Bam is going to be there. I don't think there's anything that would take Bam off the floor in those situations. Defense would completely collapse. What do you want to see Bam do differently down the stretch of games?
Well, I just want to see him get the ball more. It feels like I'm just tired of seeing, and this was a common theme last season where he'd have a slow first half, third quarter. It's as if Spo made it adamant to the team, hey, we're going to feed Bam. And you see Bam come out in the third quarter a little bit more aggressive. Then in the fourth quarter, DHOs, setting screens for other guys, getting Tyler open, getting even Kyle Anderson sometimes was getting more opportunities at the basket than Bam was. If you look at the clutch stats, he was actually the most efficient by far on the entire roster in terms of volume, right? I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it was over 45% from the field in clutch situations. I would just like to see him more aggressive because more often than not, he's gonna have an advantage. It doesn't mean that he has to shoot every time, but we've seen they're usually gonna play a center on Bam. Even when Khalil Ware was starting or he was in the lineup, they're usually gonna place their center on Bam. So Bam's gonna have an advantage, whether that leads to a bucket or a foul or an assist, driving kick. I think that is an area where he can improve. Kyle Lowry was great at that, where Bam would just kind of pass it back to him, and Kyle's like, "Nobody, you're gonna go for this,"
Right.
and that's when Bam
Kyle
had
would
his best
literally
seasons.
Kyle would literally clear out. Like, just, I'm not even an option for you. Go, right? Like, you're not.
Hmm.
It's like, I'll just give you an example. I know you have kids also. It's like, when my daughter, okay, if I want her to go learn how to pay for something, I, you know,
Yeah.
give her the few bucks and then I get out of the way. You don't look back at me for help about how to do
Hmm.
this. And that's kind of what Kyle did with him. In other words, he wasn't going to baby him, but he kind of babied him by
Yeah.
doing that. But they haven't really had a point. And I know we all had issues with Kyle. A lot of us did. But he's really the last point guard they've had, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
With the credibility to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on a lot of that. I know some of this is out of his control. Again, this is a big Alex topic that, suppose sometimes doesn't help him in those situations. Team
Yeah.
forgets him a little bit. There's also times I think he puts it upon himself, or he doesn't put it upon himself. We've seen him take over in games that, say, Jimmy wasn't playing. I remember a game against Washington years ago where Jimmy was out. I think Kyle was out. Somebody else was out. And Bam just kind of took over. There seems to be a switch that needs to go off with him that he's going to attack. I want to see him attack mismatches more down the stretch of games. And I know people are people are going and leaning into the three and all that sort of stuff. No, put the ball on the deck. I know that sometimes he puts it, it's a little too low. There's it's easy to strip if he's down in the post. I want to see if he gets the ball in the mid post and he's got a defender on him that does not have his foot speed, just go. Just
Yeah.
go, try to attack. Sometimes you'll see him; he kind of flails his arms up as he's he's at the basket. He'll get the 2 shots. But I want to see them use him now. One of the things that he can't do this year, not that Duncan was a regular closer for him, but over the past few years, he did close with him some, and they would go to that dribble handoff, and that's not going to be necessarily an option with some of these other players. All right, I have good news on the closing front because there's a third player that I think is going to close, and people say I don't prepare. I didn't. But while you were speaking and I was listening to you, I actually quickly looked this up on the stats site. So we're going to get to this on the other side. Norm Powell was really good in clutch situations last year, so I want to
Ah.
see. I want to see where you go with this. I didn't know what I was going to get, but you're going to like this. All right, you're going to like this too. If you're looking for a house in South Florida, reach out to our friends Javier and Amanda at the Real Estate Shop. You can find them at the Real Estate Shop. That's 2 P's and an E. The Real Estate Shop. FL.com. That's Real Estate Shop FL.com or the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. You're looking to buy or sell your house in a complicated housing market. We know interest rates have spiked up a little bit, then they go down, then they spike back up. There's a lot more inventory in South Florida than there was before. So this will allow you to sift through it and make the right choice for your family. And they have open houses pretty much every weekend day in South Florida, mostly in Broward County, mostly in Pines, Sunrise, Weston, all of those areas, as well as Fort Lauderdale. So check them out, realestateshopfl.com or the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. All right, before I give you these numbers, was Norm Powell going to be a closer for you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you would be correct. I'm looking at the Clippers last year. So Norm played in 24 clutch games. He led the team in scoring in the clutch at 3.2 points in clutch situations. That is a little better than Harden. Would you be stunned to know that James Harden, one of the most anti-clutch players in NBA history, shot 37% in clutch situations, 25% from three. I'm going to repeat that. 37%, 25% from three. Norm Powell shot 54%, 50% from three.
Wow.
Now, we are not talking about a huge sample size because basically, he took, I'm looking at this right now, 0.6, took about 16 threes, but he made half of them. He shot 88% from the line, and he was a plus 1.0. By the way, this is a plus 0.1 overall, so I guess he would be a plus 24 over the 24 games that the clutch situation. For those who don't know, clutch situations are game is separated by 5 or fewer points in the final 5 minutes. Okay, so anything that trips into that becomes a clutch situation. I'll give you one more stat on clutch situations last year. Kawhi only played 14 clutch games because he missed a lot of time. He shot 32% in those situations, 14% from three. The best clutch player on the Clippers last year was Norm Powell. Does that make you consider how the Heat might use him there? Can he be their closer?
No, I don't think he's going to be their closer per se. You mentioned James Harden and you mentioned Kawhi. I didn't watch a lot of their games, but more often than not, a lot of what Norm got was created by those two guys, specifically James Harden. In the pick and roll situations where he'd maybe draw two, whatever the case was. Now, one thing I do really like about Norm, and when they made this deal, first off, I was extremely excited because I've been a fan of Norman Powell for many years, but I was extremely excited because he fits so well with this team. His defense has slipped a little bit. He's about to be 32. He's not the same caliber defender that he was in his earlier years. But under Spo and under this new system and on the contract year, you better believe he's going to play better defensively. But also, and hear me out, people, because these Twitter X stands come after me. My favorite player all time is D Wade. Okay, I'm not saying that he's going to be D Wade, but Miami hasn't had a slasher that can come off the way this guy comes off of screens since D Wade in the Heat jersey. If you watch tape, and he modeled his game after D Wade. I'm not saying he's going to give the same production. He's probably going to give you anywhere
Right.
from 17 to 20 points per game this season. But if you watch how he gets a lot of his shots, he's coming off screens like a bat out of hell. He's still athletic enough to get to the cup. He can still finish over guys, even though he's 6'3". He has a nice wingspan. He's going to be very effective if you keep in mind that Tyler's still the primary creator on this team, and you still have
Mhm.
Bam, who I do believe should be getting the second most shot opportunities, but just based off of how they played last year, I think Norm is probably the second leading scorer this year on the team.
I do too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's how it's going to pan out. So I do see this being a very symbiotic relationship. I do think that Miami's going to get a lot out of him. Maybe for the next, we'll see how he plays this year. Maybe he comes back on a friendly deal, but I do feel like he will be one of the closers at the end of the game.
All right. So let's get to number 4 here. Uh, as long as Andrew Wiggins is still here, he's closing, right?
Yes, and
Okay.
also he's probably, other than Davion, which we'll get to,
Yeah.
other than Davion, he's probably going to be the best point of attack defender from guys that are eligible to close. Not including
Mhm.
Bam, obviously, because Bam's going to have to guard up.
Right. Okay. So I'm with you. I don't see any way that he doesn't. I know that the playoffs were disastrous, not just for him, by the way, but for a lot of players, although he completely no-showed.
Yeah,
I don't think his defense was at the level that we expected or that he was at Golden State. I'm going to attribute a little of that to sort of the discomfort with a new situation, being traded midseason. Doesn't seem like he ever really completely fit in. Then he hurt the ankle. He got hurt again. So he missed some time, which is problematic, by the way, because one of the reasons they got rid of Jimmy
yeah,
was they had issues with Jimmy. So he's got to be more available. But if he's there, Spo's going to close with him. I think that the only other option I could see there is to close with Haywood at times if Wiggins is really struggling. I think there are times where we've seen Spo, if a lineup gets him back into the game,
yeah.
this has been a trend of his basically since 2008. If a lineup gets him back in the game, he does not take the lineup out. Even if you go 4 overtimes and they are panting on the floor, he is not taking the lineup out.
No,
So I can see there being some games where Wiggins just doesn't have it. And Haywood is providing a spark. He's the only one I can really see on this roster who would fill that role if he's defending at a high level of maybe staying in the game towards the end. He has closed a lot of games in the past, but I think Wiggins is the primary guy. And I also think it's on the offensive end. It's to give. I think he can get to the line in some of those situations, not as a primary player in the action, but as a secondary action, ball swings and he creates something. And he does have the ability to hit mid-range shot, which sometimes we know in clutch situations you need more of that because
yeah.
teams are taking away other things. So I'm with you on Wiggins. But
One real
let's get
quick
to
thing.
go ahead.
One
Hmm.
quick thing about Wiggins that people don't understand. In addition to the ankle, I believe there was a hamstring issue.
There was.
Hamstring, like we see it in the NFL. Like right now, I'm in a fantasy football league, and everybody's tweaking out about Justin Jefferson having
Right.
a hamstring strain and how he's dropping. Listen, this impacts NBA players as well. We've seen it how Chris Paul suffered it in a game in the 7-game series against Golden State when he was in
Hmm.
Houston. Like these things are impactful, and for a guy that is so reliant on his game in terms of athleticism, because Wiggs is a very athletic guy, that's going to impact him having to guard Donovan Mitchell.
Mm.
So these are things that people have to take into account coming into this season, and also him probably being the fourth option now.
Yeah.
It'll unleash a little bit of a better version defensively.
Okay. So we are in agreement on those 4. Um, who's the 5th?
All right, so this is where things get tricky, and I think the fifth will be situational.
Hmm.
I don't think for the Khalil Ware stands. I don't think it will be him
I don't
this
either.
season. I don't think it
I
will
don't
be
either.
him. I
Better chance
think
to start that. Better chance to start than to close.
correct, correct. Now, I do think it's going to be a toss up depending on the matchup. If they're playing a Trey Young type, you're going to see Davion out there. If it's not against a team like that, they're probably going to have Nico is who I think would be the fifth guy to close.
Do
That's
you trust? That's who I want to see in a lot of situations. I think he's going to lean towards Davion, which and I think they're going to end up playing small, which is going to frustrate fans
Yes.
as much as they like Davion, because they're going to say, well, Norm's playing the 3, Wiggins is playing the 4, Bam's playing the 5, you're doing that small ball stuff. And every time they give up a defensive rebound, that's all we're going to hear the next day. Even though their best rebounding season in the last 6 was with PJ Tucker at 6'5", playing the 4, and Bam playing the 5, because PJ just knew how to box out. Okay.
Yeah.
And that, right. So, and he had acreage, as they say, and that made up for a lot of things. And that's one of the reasons they had one of their most successful regular season that they've had since the Big 3. I think he's going to lean towards Davion, as long
I
if
agree.
Davion is making shots, right? If Davion
Yeah.
is making shots, and defensively, that does take the pressure off Tyler, because you have Davion in there, you have Wiggins in there, and then so essentially, Norm's going to have to probably guard up.
Yeah.
Bam's going to have to guard up, which is what he's typically done. Now, the Jovic thing, I know a lot of us are just fans of Nico's sort of versatility, his game, the way he sees the floor. I do think that unlocks some things for them offensively late in games. But to me, if he's going to be in there at the end, one, he can't make the silly play. Like, sometimes he gets a little overexcited. The turnover stuff has got to. He can't have any of that. He can't try to do too much in those situations. But I think the single biggest thing is just if he can make open spot up shots. If he can make open spot up shots, particularly from 3, which he's shown the ability to do, then I think then Spo may lean into him a little more. I think their upside is higher with Nico. But I think I don't think it's going to be Ware most times. But I think ultimately it's going to be Davion.
So I would agree with you, and I think those 4 are locked in, but I do think the 5th is going to be situational because of what you mentioned. Like, Davion just got the contract. He's their best point of attack defender. But this is the thing with Nico that I know his stats are not screaming off the pages, but he does things that this team needs, right? You can literally, and I'm not saying he's a point guard, but you can literally initiate the offense with him so that you have Tyler and Norm coming off screens at 100 miles per hour. Then you have the synergy that he has with Bam. I mean, Wiggins could be the guy spotting up, who's actually a better
Yep.
spot up shooter, anyways, than Nico is. And then also, if let's say you're playing against a team that wants to go double big, you can have Bam guard the center and Nico could guard the forward. So I think there's a lot of potential there. There's a wild card in there that I'm gonna just throw in there.
I got
Just
one for you too. We have the same one.
It's the same one. I guarantee it's the same one.
It's Larson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not Jaquez. It's Larson, right?
No, Larson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why? Because that's my obvious one also, especially after watching him in Summer League.
The reason why is because he's the player that best personifies the heart and soul of this team, of what Miami Heat culture is. I think he's going to be the first one to dive on a loose ball. He's going to be the one
Yeah.
that's going to sacrifice. He's the one that doesn't need the touches. He'll cut off, backdoor cut, ghost cuts. He'll do all the dirty work that nobody else is willing to do.
Yep. And I think them putting him in situations in Summer League to have the ball in his hands more and see if he could draw contact, get to the line. It strikes me that if you put him out there, plus he gives you a little bit more size than Davion.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if he gets comfortable with Tyler and Norm, I can see them running out the 3 of them, and Larson can guard up then. Norm doesn't necessarily have to, even though he has the strength to do it. I think Larson is the wild card here. In fact, I think I say he's got a better chance to close games than Nico does a lot, because I think Spo is going to. I think where Jovic, if Jovic doesn't start, if he starts gives you Ware the carrot, provided that Ware earns it during camp. I think there's going to be pockets of the game that are like Nico pockets, like where Jovic is out there with Herro and they're playing loose, okay, and they try to get some stuff in transition and they run offense through him, but ultimately. You're right. I think that Spoelstra is going to go to Larson and say, I know I'm getting 100 miles an hour. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the only concern there is he was turnover prone in Summer League, but the ball won't be in his hands that much. So,
No.
but it was just like they wanted to give him a look with it, and it reminded me very much, even though he's a different player because he's not a shooter. Strus came in as a shooter. It reminded me of what they did with Strus in Summer League, where they made Strus primary initiator during Summer League, so he had those reps, and you could see the trust building in Spo playing him, and then you played him late in games, and then
Yeah.
he played him the whole fourth quarters, and he didn't play. And Strus and Larson have a very similar basketball mentality. Max was always on the floor, a little better athlete, I think, than Pella is, but like
Yeah.
just generally that he embodied some of that. So I'm with you. I think the four are set. I would rank it in terms of what he's going to do. I think Davion, Larson, Jovic, where Jaquez.
But I think you and I can agree that what would probably benefit this team the most is having Nico be that fifth guy.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. The thing that would benefit this team the most of anything is Nico becoming one of their core best players this year.
Yeah.
Like somebody that he is playing 30 to 32 minutes and he doesn't want to take off the floor. Do I expect that to happen? I don't know if he's quite ready to do it. But the way he spoke of him,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked him that question out in Vegas, and the growth that he's had, and now the growth he's going to have, ideally playing for a very tough coach, a European coach that the Serbian coach who's going to push him. He's challenged Jovic. He said, go get those rotation and closing minutes there. Well, I think Spoelstra thinks if he can get him there, then he's got a better chance to get him with him. And
Yeah.
right. So I
Yeah.
want that's what I would like to see, because to me that means the team has taken a leap. Davion is a security blanket. You can
Yeah.
close with him. He's going to defend. If that's the worst case scenario, you're okay with it. Okay. But I'm with you. And Larson, I think, is like Davion plus. Okay. That if he
Yeah.
feels like it, but Jovic would be the one. It's Jaquez that's got to find a place here. And we just did a long episode on him, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I see it. I don't know if I see it for him. And then Highsmith, I think, is the Wiggins fallback. I think there are
Yeah.
some games that he could get those minutes. Hard to see anybody else on the roster though. I don't think
No.
Fontecchio,
No. And
Kishad, obviously.
it's certainly positioned this way because if like Miami, I would say their biggest weakness right now, granted, yeah, we need a superstar. Okay, cool. But their biggest weakness
Right.
right now is that third big. And the fact that
Yeah.
they're not really prioritizing that, I know there's like luxury tax implications and whatnot, but
Right.
they're basically saying, hey, Nico, you're the pseudo third big. Whenever you're in there,
Yeah.
either Bam or Khalil are going to stay in there with you, so you don't have to be guarding the center. And
Right.
here, man, you're going to be the sixth man of the year. That's what it feels like. Like they're kind of like
Right.
pushing for that.
They better not have an injury to any of those three. They got
Exactly.
serious problems because that
Thomas
I
Bryant,
watched.
baby.
Uh, you can't get him back. He was too valuable at Indiana. Well, I watched Golden at Summer League, and there's some.
Yeah, it's
I
too
mean,
slow.
he plays hard, but he's got lead feet. I just don't know that that's going to work out, and then we're going to end up. Is Dwayne Dedman still available? Geo, we appreciate it. You can follow him at Geo Valdez _ on Twitter. Coach Geo, you'll be hearing more from him and also the other work that he does. We appreciate it. What would our closing lineup be? I think Brady, Alex, Greg. Eternal would just take all 5 spots. Anyway, have a good one.